Hello, fellow bassists. Welcome back to my Bass Player University. And don't get the wrong idea. I was not playing that opening for you to think, wow, that was amazing, George. Anything but that. I played those chords down low, and I did take away some bass, by the way, from my signal. If I were to do any one of those, boosting the bass again, here's the bass boosted once again. If I did it that way, it's already getting muddier, isn't it? Let's see how muddy it gets. Okay. My point is, right off the bat, that even though this is a video about chords on bass, there are a lot of ways to approach a chord. On any type of guitar, yes, we do play a bass guitar, but we are bass players. So to play a chord, which is often a triad of 3 notes or more. Well, you don't get more than 3 in a triad, but you understand my point. Chords can be 3 notes or more. And we will discuss why 2 notes is not good enough, usually, in a little bit. But the point here is that when you have a triad, where it would normally sound like this, something like guitar sound maybe, something like that, where you can hear each note clearly. Here, if I don't play it like that, it just sounds very muddy, very hard to distinguish what's actually going on. And that's the point. Our instrument is not necessarily made to play full triads as you would expect to hear them down low. That's not the point. When you play up in a higher register, then you can play your triads just like the one I did before. Here's a minor triad. Here's a major triad. Here's diminished. Here's augmented. Now, even if I don't do something called arpeggiate and play each note separately, you can still hear it, for the most part, clearly, and you get the distinction of each note. Keep in mind, again, I have changed my tone a little bit to give you a sense of something a little closer to what a regular, normal guitar might sound like for chords. Now, the most important aspects of this video are going to be how you should approach learning and playing chords on our beloved 4-string or 5 or 6-string bass. And of course, this can be done on any number of strings, but the 4-string is what we're using for now, just to give you the sense that most people do still use 4, which is pretty awesome, and depends on the setting, obviously, but it's the most practical for what's happening. Anyway, I want you to hear something before we talk any further about chords. I want to prove my point that I brought up a little earlier about how you do need 3 notes for there to be a chord, for there to be a true triad with all the things necessary for it to sound the way that it should. Here's how. When you hear 2 notes at once, you get something called an interval. An interval is the distance between 2 notes. When you get any interval, especially a third, as in here's a 1, here's a 2, here's a 3. If we're playing at the same time, we get what's called a major third. And hopefully, this sounds major to you. I hope that it does. That's the point. Now, here is the point I'd like to make now. If you take these same 2 notes, kind of put myself in the ringer here to play a note that's far away. If you play these same 2 notes, I'm going to use my flexibility to my advantage here. Never mind. I'm playing the wrong note altogether. Here's those 2 notes, that major third. Now I'm playing a 3rd note down low in the bass. What happens there? What happens when we play these 2 notes? Oh, I'm messing this up. happens. Suddenly, it sounds minor. And it should. It was suddenly a minor triad all along. We had this. Now we have this. Now let me go back to the original two notes and play an E. Now it stays major. So the point is, if you don't use a certain low third note, you don't get the sound you originally had. You can deceive the ear of the listener, as a matter of fact. And there is even something called a deceptive cadence, which is a little beyond the scope of this video today. So keep that in mind. Two notes can sound major. It can sound minor. Here's that example. Let's try something that sounds minor. Let's do this. You'll notice I'm using similar notes from before. I am, as a matter of fact. And if you feel like labeling them, it is C sharp and E this time around. Now, minor. Let's play a different low note to change that. This is only two notes. Here comes the third. Now we have a major sounding chord. This may be the most important thing of the entire video, that you need three notes to actually know what the triad is, what's being implied. How does this work? Why does it work, more importantly? I think that the easiest way for you to think about it, if this is all brand new for you, or if you've been playing things like this for a long time and you just didn't know, now's the time. And that's what the university is for, of course. When we play chords, we usually do arpeggios, or we imply the chord on a note-to-note basis. This would be that same major chord here, would be here. Right? This would be A major for a bass player. That's A major stuff, right? That same chord. When we play bass lines, we imply chords. And sometimes we just get the root, which is fine. It can be awesome and powerful to play the root. Now remember something. What you play down low has, because of that example before, has a major impact on what's going on above it. Everything that happens that's not you as a bass player is happening above you in the octaves, in the soundscape, or in what we call the texture of what's going on. You are in complete control. And this is why we play the root so much. Chords are often meant to be heard with the root at the bottom. That's where they're stable. If you change that, you get something that's relatively unstable. Here is a major third. Here's a note that's in that chord to make it three, but it's not the root of the chord. Now it works, but it's relatively unstable. So here's how a triad is made. If it's a major triad, you get a major third followed by a minor third. If it's a minor triad, take a guess, you get a minor third followed by a major third. The fretboard is a great place to see this. This interval here, 1 fret away, is a major third. This interval here, 2 frets away, you hear the difference, is a minor third. You can see it when you make a major chord. Here's the single fret, and here's the 2 frets away, right? Now if we flip that, now I change the middle note. We have a root third fifth. We change the middle note. Now the distance of 2 frets is here in the beginning. Minor third, major third. And then we have in the major chord, major third, minor third. So how you learn how to do all of these things can affect how you play your bass lines and affect which finger you choose to start a line with, for example, and many other things. Maybe you want to play your triad like this. Maybe you want to have pointer, pointer, so you can reach the octave here. We usually see our octaves this way, 2 frets over, 2 frets down. They can also be this, 3 frets back, 3 frets down. It's a good idea to have options going this way and that way. It's one of the many things that we do discuss as we're taking our group sessions towards things like this, things like, you could call this theory, but it's also technique. You want to know which fingers you want to use to get into these places. You want to know which octave to use and when and why, if you are playing the root or if you're not. And this brings us to another point about the way triads work. And we're just discussing triads for the moment, by the way. There are many other types of chords that go well beyond having only 3 notes. Chords can be what's called inverted. You can take the same 3 notes and reorder them so the lowest note that you hear is now different. Let's take the best chord to make an excuse for using is C major. Let's use C major triad because it is C, E, G, all natural notes. And the key that relates to C major has no sharps and flats at all. So if we look at C major, here is how it looks with the root at the bottom, C, E, G. Now we can put the E at the bottom. Now I got E, G, C. And then we can put the G at the bottom. Now I have G, C, E. Same 3 letters, reordered. These are great ways to start moving around the fretboard. You never know when you might need it, but you got to have some fun, and you can't always just do. You could, but there's always a time to branch out and move around, right? Maybe you want to slide a certain one in. Not perfect, but as you guys know, I'm staring at the camera. I'm just doing my best to bring you ideas. And I like leaving these little, call them mistakes. I don't care. I like leaving these little things in the videos because you can see that I'm a human being and I'm not sitting here doing jump shots and cutting out things and re-recording them. And I'm just giving you a real human being. You get to be one-on-one with a human being in these videos. And it's not just me giving you this perfect little thing. And I hope that you can appreciate that that is my delivery style here. And I also believe this is why My Bass Player University is a wonderful place for you to learn and grow. I grow too. We all grow together in the university environment. And you get a chance to work with somebody live and other people that are working on the same thing you're working on. Everyone learns differently. But I truly believe that it's a better environment than simply rewinding and rewatching a video over and over again to get something. You get access to me as your coach, technically, all week. Got a question? Give it to me. I'll get back to you. It's not just that I only speak to you during the times of the class. So I think that's a major factor in how, if all of this is unfamiliar, it would be, time to really push and make sure that all this stuff becomes familiar as soon as possible. Doesn't mean it has to be perfectly set in stone. Make it familiar. And then, of course, you will get better. It's not about being some robot tied to rules, locked into classical theory. It's about knowing the rules so that you can break them anytime that you want, and being able to explain it. Being able to teach something means that you know it better than somebody who can't teach it. And this is a good way for you to kind of gauge where you are. Can you teach it? Can you teach this idea to somebody? Now, there's another thing that should be mentioned now that comes up a lot as people are starting to get more into seventh chords. And keep in mind, as a bass player, you've played sevenths, you've played tenths, you've played fifths, you've played every interval. If you learn one bass line, you've played a bunch of intervals. You know them. It's a matter of putting the name with the face. Yeah, I've played C to E flat a bunch. The question is that root minor third for a C minor triad? Or is it the third and the fifth of A flat major? Over the course of that little phrase, I hope you heard that I melded what sounded minor and I turned it into A flat major. This is exactly what I'm getting at. Knowing the rules so you can break them or take full advantage and understand what you're doing with them. This creates intention in your playing. This is how you make better bass lines. This is how you get the sound that you heard in your head out into the fretboard. The instrument is the problem. The instrument is in the way. I know that maybe over 95% of you know what you want already. And it's tough to get it out onto the fingerboard when you're playing live or when you're playing on the fly in a practice session, or even if you're just jamming to your own drum beat or something, or to the drum beat that's in your head. What's in your mind musically is right. It's good. Trust your instincts. If the instrument and only playing the same pattern over and over again is in the way, that's going to prevent you from doing what you actually want. This often discourages people from continuing the process of learning things like theory and advanced techniques. It's never that far away because you already know what you want. You just have to know how to get it through what I call musical currency and getting a good handle on scales and chords and certain techniques. It's not about, it's not about playing fast. Who cares about that? That's fine, and we want it when the time comes. But being able to play 16th note funk tight, that's more important than playing super fast. Another thing that we see very often is we see what are called tenths. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, if you know enough about these things, that a scale is 8 notes. It's an octave. OCT being a prefix for 8. And it is 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it's really actually only 7 individual notes, with the 8th note being the same as the starting note again. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Let me start over. So there's only 7 individual notes. Now, I'm saying tenth. Well, what does that mean? There's something called a compound interval. If you go beyond the 8, now you have 9. You go one more, you get 10. So what does it mean? Rule of 7. Take away 7 from any larger number, intervallically speaking, and you'll get what it actually is. Here's what I mean. If you have 8, minus 7 is 1. It's the same note. You get 9, minus 7, that's the second. And if you go to the 10th, that's actually really just the third. So rather than be muddy down here like when we first started the video, and do this for your G major triad, or to do this as a guitarist, which is not necessarily necessary. These are all G major. You can just do a 10th. Here's G, here's the chord G, B, D. Here's G, here's B. Now we have tenths. What's nice about tenths, you take advantage of both strings, you get a completely different tone on both of them. If you pluck it like this, you'll get a down pluck and an up pluck, which is nice for the tone. And you really distinctly hear the two notes as individuals. And I'm removing my fingers here to show you, not to tell you that this is the way to play it. You should be playing it like this at all times. You should always have both of your hands, all your fingers out, no matter what you're doing. Everyone wants to be at the party. Never do this. Never push up against the fingerboard here. It's never a good idea. So I discussed arpeggios, and I had written it as the last thing to mention here, but I think we kind of talked about them enough. But the word arpeggio literally means to take a chord and to play it note by note. You'll hear it more in a piano or guitar setting where all the notes get held. That's an arpeggio. But for us, we mix and match things, we get sounds. Sounds like I'm dancing around. Doesn't sound like I'm playing a bass line at all, by the way. So try to use information like this as much as you can when you're creating a bass line or when you're trying to learn one on the fly. If the chord being played in the song is E minor, chances are good that if you start with E, G, B, the chords of E minor, the letters of E minor, E, G, B, chances are good that at the very least, you're going to score some piece of the bass line you're working on or trying to figure out. Again, what's in your head? We think in triads. We think in certain scales because that's what we're used to hearing. That's what we grew up hearing. Don't let the instrument get in the way. The theory does matter. You don't want to get stuck on patterns on the fingerboard holding you back from actually knowing what note that you played. How many times have you done this and not said to yourself even one letter that was happening? You say you start with pointer on 5 and then I do this thing. I know how it is because I fall into that trap sometimes too. But when I'm really focused, thinking about the notes can help you a lot. Especially if you're doing a multi-note line and there's one note that's like, wait, what note is that? Try the scale first. Try the chord first. It's probably that. And if it's not, then you hear it against that. And you're like, oh, it wasn't A, it was G sharp, 1 fret away. So the point of this whole video is that chords exist in many ways. And there's a lot of fun ways to think about them and do them. And you know, what I was doing earlier, man, what did I do? I put my fingers down and I tried to pluck. See that? Did it again. What am I doing? I can't believe I messed that up. It's great. I like leaving the mistakes here for you. Everyone can join me in my mistakes. Because if you're here and you're not an elemental master, and you're out there, I know it, then you make mistakes too. There's mistakes on some of your favorite recordings. And they keep them because the take is so damn good. It is not about perfection. And I hope that you take that to heart because it's important to not beat yourself up over silly little things. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, visit my website, join my mailing list, and consider joining the Bass University. We meet twice a week. We have a syllabus every month that changes with the needs of the students. I give you a weekly progress report with a score and a number of words for you to read and to make sure that you are where you think you are. And so you can grow into the bass player that you are destined to become. Don't let the fretboard get in the way of that. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.